the pads are the only things the teams are not allowed to change overnight. Now, not even with a penalty. Like, you can't just go to the back and change it.
Denny Hamlin walked into the NASCAR hauler at Iowa Speedway with one simple request. He walked out with something he says he has never dealt with. It was not a fine. It was not a warning. It was a warning about a penalty that did not even exist yet. And the thing NASCAR told him behind that hauler door changed how he drove the entire race. Go back to Saturday at Iowa. Denny Hamlin rolls out for practice in the number 11 Toyota. 2 laps in, the brakes are gone. Not soft. Gone. And he is not alone. Chase Briscoe has the same problem. Riley Herbst does too. All 4 Joe Gibbs Racing cars and all 3 2311 cars end up in the garage, torn apart, crews digging through brake parts. Here is what most people got wrong. Everyone assumed Hamlin was testing something wild, some risky experiment. That was not it. Hamlin has never run well at Iowa, so he borrowed a setup from 2311, one he says had been run close to 20 times at that track with no trouble. We tried to run something a little bit different, not unknown, Hamlin said. You know, other teams have run it quite a bit before. I wanted to lean a little bit on 2311. He kept going. They had been pretty strong at this track over the last year or so kind of wanted to lean on their setups a little bit more this time around, since I hadn't had success at this racetrack quite yet. So the setup was proven. The rotors were fine. What broke? Brake pads. That is the whole story. Hamlin believes his team simply got a bad batch of them. I am pretty confident. The team, I believe, is pretty confident that it was a bad batch of actual brake pads, Hamlin said. We believe the pads to be the issue simply because everything else is the same for all the other cars. Now here is where the rulebook turns into a trap. NASCAR usually lets teams touch brake parts when safety is involved. Calipers, brake lines, master cylinders, all of those can be swapped. Why? Because NASCAR hands those parts to every team. If a mandated part fails, that failure belongs to NASCAR. Brake pads are different. Teams pick and buy their own pads. So NASCAR calls that setup not safety, and Iowa was an impound race. Once the car clears inspection, the setup is locked. Hamlin explained the box he was stuck in. What's interesting is that the pads are the only things the teams are not allowed to change overnight. Not even with a penalty. Like, you can't just go to the back and change it. Read that again. Not even with a penalty. He could not buy his way out. So it puts you in a box to where if you've made the wrong decision or you have what we deem as defective pads, I can't get out of the box. Like, we know we have a problem. But they're like, it's because it is a product that we choose. So Hamlin went to the hauler. Joe Gibbs came with him. Hamlin started offering deals. First offer, let him change the pads and he starts on pit lane, not the back of the field. Pit lane, that is worse than last. NASCAR said no. I told them I'd start on pit lane. Like, just let me get out of this box. Like, we have a major problem. And they were like, that's not the way it's written right now. So Hamlin pushed harder. This was not about speed. This was about a car with no brakes at the fastest short track on the schedule. I said, I know that. However, like, this is where common sense has to come into play. That this is not for some strategic advantage. This is to hopefully keep my car from blowing a rotor or going into a corner dead straight and wiping someone or myself head on into the wall. That's what we're trying to do here. Then came offer 2. Start on pit lane at Iowa. Then start dead last at Richmond. 2 penalties, 1 problem. That's enough to where you ain't going to be screwing around. No one wants to take that penalty. That's a really rough penalty, but like, just give some sort of avenue out if a mistake is made. NASCAR said no again. So Hamlin played his last card. He told them he might simply refuse to get in the car. I said, what if I just tell the team, nope, I will not go on the racetrack with those brake pads. Absolutely not. I'm too old to be hitting this wall head on. That is when NASCAR answered. According to Hamlin, officials said that if he pulled that move, they would create a punishment on the spot, and it would hurt more than anything he offered. They said, well, we would make up a penalty, and it would be worse than what it would be if you just came in and changed them under green. Hamlin gave up. His plan became survival. I was like, oh well, I guess I just got to go slower. Then if I lose brakes, I'm just going to putt around the racetrack and end up however many laps down that I end up. So they did acknowledge that they were willing to make up a rule. Now think about that race from inside the car. Hamlin says he had roughly 10% of his brakes for about 20% of the race. Around half his brakes for about 60% of it. Full brakes only about 20% of the time. The good pedal only showed up right after a caution, when things cooled off. That lasted about 3 laps. He also started at the very back because his team changed a cooling part and NASCAR called it an unapproved adjustment. Then something happened that makes no sense on paper. Denny Hamlin finished 5th. Chase Briscoe finished 6th. Ty Gibbs won the race. And Hamlin left Iowa stronger. He walked in with an 84-point lead. He walked out with a 103-point lead, with Ty Gibbs now sitting 2nd. Tyler Reddick finished last after a lap 4 wreck and dropped all the way to 4th. Hamlin also took the blame for the whole mess. My message to my team, and I'll take the responsibility for it, is that I can't hit my ass with both hands at this racetrack. He said his team even asked if he wanted the borrowed brake package too. He waved it off. And I'm like, it was fine for them, it'll be fine for me, and so that's the approach we took. Then NASCAR fired back. Mike Ford, the NASCAR Vice President of Racing Communications, went on the Hauler Talk podcast and pushed back on the idea of an invented penalty. By creating a new penalty, that's one way of looking at it if you want. The other way of looking at it is, we have discretionary penalties in our toolbox. And that's what we were referring to. Ford said the number 11 team would have been ignoring a direct order. That already lives in the rulebook. So, is that a 3-lap penalty, a 5-lap penalty, a 20-lap penalty, whatever it is? So, we wouldn't be creating one, but we would be using our discretion. Ford also asked his own people a question. If NASCAR had let Hamlin swap those pads, how angry would the garage be on a scale of 1 to 10? Brad Moran turns to me and goes 10, and then Brian Goebel, our chief inspector, said 11. Ford even took a shot at how the story was packaged. Old Dirty Mo up to their old tricks. But he also gave Hamlin credit for telling it straight, and said everyone left the hauler on decent terms. He added one line that says plenty. And it probably helped that he finished 5th, by the way. Here is the strange part. While all of this was blowing up, Hamlin was on a private lake in Texas with Bassmaster Elite Pro Chris Zaldane, chasing giant largemouth bass. Hamlin pulled in fish weighing 5.15 pounds, 5.13 pounds, and 6.12 pounds. Then he landed a 7.3-pound largemouth before flying home to North Carolina. Same man, 1 week, a break fight with NASCAR, a top 5 finish, a growing points lead, and a trophy base. And this fight is not over. Ford admitted the debrief meeting on Monday turned into a long talk about what that penalty would have looked like, and he said there is more to come on it. He also said NASCAR feels good about the call it made, and that the sport ruled the way it has always ruled. So the rule book stays exactly the same for now. That means the next driver who finds a bad set of pads on a Saturday will be stuck in the same box Denny Hamlin was stuck in. The only difference is that driver may not finish 5th. So here is the real question. Should NASCAR add a safety exception for bad brake pads, even if it costs a team laps? Or does opening that door let every team play games with qualifying pads and race pads? Tell me exactly where you land on this argument.